Do you feel like you're stuck or find yourself attracting the same type of relationships and negative experiences, or just not manifesting what you want in life? Welcome to Heal Your Story. I'm your host, Heidi Dallaire. Here we discuss all things life, love, relationships, the relationship with yourself, and the stories we tell about ourselves and others. I help people get out of their busy heads and get back in touch with their heart space to learn self-love and help heal their story. I'm a heart space and relational coach, a holistic health practitioner, and author at HeidiDallaire.com and LoveWideOpen.com. Let's go hold some heart space together. Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to episode 183 of season 7. Woo! Starting off 2024 with setting boundaries versus letting go. This episode is inspired by a question I received from a follower asking about a certain scenario they were in, which I'm not going to get into, but whether they should set a boundary or just let it go. So before we even delve into the intricacies of when to set boundaries and when to let things go, let's establish a really solid foundation on what boundaries are and why they matter. And if you're new to the concept or simply want a refresher, consider this your crash course in boundaries, okay? Boundaries are they're like invisible fences that define the emotional and interpersonal space that we occupy. Right? They serve as a guide for how we allow others to treat us and how we engage with the world around us. If you're unsure about this whole boundary thing, I recommend checking out other podcast episodes all about boundaries. There's a bunch of them. I even have blog posts, and I'm going to try to list them all in the show notes for you. So now let's address a common scenario. You're mastering the art of setting boundaries, but there's this one person in your life who seems to require boundary reinforcement on almost a daily basis. It's draining, right? We want to avoid turning boundary setting into a never-ending battle. That's not how boundaries work. But before we explore that, let's touch on the essence of what boundaries truly signify. When you set a boundary, you're essentially declaring to the world, hey, I respect myself enough to communicate what behaviors I find acceptable and what behaviors I won't tolerate. It's an act of self-affirmation, a powerful acknowledgement that you matter and your well-being is non-negotiable. Now, the challenge arises when dealing with recurring patterns, especially with individuals who might be challenging, controlling, or very resistant to change, or any of those in yourself. These situations require a really nuanced understanding of the difference between merely stating a boundary and the more intricate task of enforcing it. If you're repeatedly facing the same battles, we want to navigate away from the drain and towards healthier dynamics. Remember, not everyone consciously understands or acknowledges their toxic behaviors. It's not necessarily that they're malicious individuals, rather, they have fallen into patterns based on what you've previously tolerated or what someone else has previously tolerated with their behavior. And this is where your journey to build self-confidence intertwines with the art of setting and enforcing boundaries. Now, establishing your boundaries not only helps you identify toxic patterns, but also makes you stand out as a very confident individual. Your ability to articulate your needs and limits becomes a beacon of attraction for those who value healthy communication. Of course, not everyone appreciates this quality and particularly those with self-serving agendas, like those with narcissistic type personalities or toxic personality. So as you go walking down this path of understanding boundaries, keep in mind that these are tools for your own well-being. They are not weapons to control others. And it's time to recognize the essence of boundaries and why they play a pivotal role in our emotional landscape. just going to pause for a second. And if you want more help with boundaries, please reach out. Okay, so knowing when to set a boundary. Here's the first rule of thumb. If your physical or emotional well-being is at risk, it's time to set a boundary. Physical harm is relatively easier to identify, but emotional manipulation really requires some awareness. Educate yourself on manipulative tactics. I have a couple of blog posts on Heidi Dallaire and also on Love Wide Open about toxic personalities, narcissists for reference. Emotional manipulation involves control, gaslighting, guilt tripping, and playing mind games. Spotting these tactics allows you to avoid falling into their traps. Enforcing boundaries may range from a simple verbal assertion to more intricate measures, depending on the situation and the individual. Now, if you have been in a patterning role from your childhood and trauma things that have brought you to this point of being able to be gaslighted or not seeing what's actually happening around you, this is part of your own space of developing your self-awareness and breaking your own patterning, befriending your own emotions of why you're in a situation with these types of people in the first place. Okay, but I digress. Now, your intuition is an extremely powerful guide. If you feel uneasy or anxious around someone, it's really essential to understand the root cause of why you do. Engaging in open communication with non-toxic individuals helps clarify intentions, fostering understanding, right? When you're having a very clear conversation with someone, doesn't that feel good because they listen for understanding, you're explaining, they repeat back to you what they believe you said to them, and it creates this trust. But when you have communication with a toxic individual, there's always a moment of unease because, one, you don't know if they're going to believe you. You're second guessing yourself, potentially are going to use that statement or communication against you. Ooh, it's a whole circle of gobbledygook in here. Not every situation warrants an immediate confrontation, right? Like, not every situation needs a boundary. So finding the balance between addressing uncomfortable issues and letting minor concerns go is crucial. Protecting your energy becomes a priority, and not every battle needs to be fought. If we're always doing that, we're always in fight, because we're wanting perfection. Acceptance and letting go. Acceptance is key. If you recognize that a relationship may never align with your expectations or your needs, it really becomes a lot easier to let go. This doesn't necessarily mean cutting ties completely, although sometimes it does, but rather creating distance to protect your energy and your well-being. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of boundaries is consistency, whether it's maintaining consistency with others or within yourself. It requires practice. Boundaries take practice. Practicing detachment and recognizing when a situation isn't worth your time is a really valuable skill. So I hope today's quick little crash course on boundaries and letting go has shed some light on the delicate balance that there is between the two of setting boundaries and letting go. Remember, boundaries are for your well-being and not to control others. And if it's coming at you vice versa and someone's trying to control you, this is where it's time to take a really deep look into what is best for your emotional and mental well-being, and to perhaps leave that relationship, whether it be romantic, platonic, friendship, work, whatever. Again, there's going to be some blog post links, and I will also post the episode numbers to a couple other podcast episodes about boundaries or anything else relevant in the show notes or in the comments below. And if you want help because you don't even know where to go or where to start with boundaries, that it's a foreign concept for you, or you're having difficulty, please reach out. I'm more than willing to help. Bye for now, all.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Heal Your Story. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find me, my coaching services, my book, or book a Heal Your Story strategy session at HeidiDelaire.com. For other self-development articles, go to lovewideopen.com. And you can also follow me at Heidi Delaire or Love Wide Open on all social media channels. Thanks so much. Sending lots of love.